Okay, the music is off. That's my cue, and I blew it. But here we go. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here at the Olio Storytelling Night again. It's my third time, so maybe it's a charm. I don't know. We'll see. Got a good lineup tonight, a variety of stories, scary stories. I don't know. I think the world's pretty scary right now myself, but I guess a couple more scary stories won't make any difference. And we got some, a trip down memory lane, and we got a story about autumn, so let's get started. Our first storyteller is Tom Clark, and I just met Tom tonight, and we have some things in common, teachers, we are teachers, and we know Jim May, a storytelling friend from Illinois, so I'm eager to hear Tom's story. He got a start in kindergarten and says that he liked to transport his students to interesting places via his story. So Tom, are you ready? Come on up.
Not a good sign. I am excited to be here again on this stage tonight. What a wonderful place and a wonderful venue for a story. Let's give them a round of applause. This is wonderful. I'm really happy to start out tonight because you're in for a treat. You're going to be transported many different places and into many different lives and personalities through story. But I always like to share folk tales with people because folk tales have been around for hundreds of years, and they always impart a little nugget, at least one little nugget of wisdom. And so that's where I'd like us to begin tonight. This is a folktale from Russia, and no, I'm not trying to influence your votes by sharing it with you. I would like you to vote, but I'm not influencing it. This is a very old Russian folktale. Once upon a time, outside of a small Russian village, a young man was walking early in the morning on his way to his job at the village store. And it was about this time of year, and so in the morning it was very chilly and cold. No snow on the ground yet, but it was chilly. And so he was walking briskly down that road toward the village when he heard a sound he had never recognized or heard before, and it was pathetic. It was kind of like a tweet and kind of like a screech and kind of like a yowl, and that's when he looked in the ditch alongside the road, and he saw a bird lying there almost motionless, but it was trying to chirp. And so he rushed over, picked up that bird, and realized this poor thing was near death. He was freezing to death. And he held it close to him, and he thought, oh, if I could just warm this bird up, it would survive. And wait a minute, I've got to get to the general store and open it. I can't hold this bird all day. I know, he thought. I'll cover it up with something, and the body heat will eventually gather up and warm that bird up, and he'll survive. So he set it down, and he set about looking for something to cover it up with. And he looked for leaves, there were none, and he looked for grasses, and there were none. The only thing he could find was some cow manure over along the side of the road. So he thought, well, it's not pretty, but I'm sure it will help warm that bird up. So he covered up the body of that bird with cow manure right up to his neck. And then he set it back down in the ditch, and he went on his way to the village, confident that he had saved that bird's life. Now, a couple of hours went by, and another young man came walking down that road on his way to the village. And he was walking along, and all of a sudden he heard this odd sound. It wasn't odd, it was pathetic. And he looked around to see what it was, and he saw this bird. Well, this bird had indeed gotten warmer, and he had started to sing, or sort of, but it was unlike a sound this young man had ever heard, and he thought, oh my God, look at that. Someone covered this poor bird with cow manure. And so he uncovered the bird and looked at it, and the bird tried to sing. It wasn't real pretty, but he tried to sing, and that young man went on down the road knowing that after he uncovered that bird from all that cow manure, he had saved its life. An hour later, the bird died. Now, there are 3 morals to this story. First of all, it's not always your enemies who get you into it. Second one is, it's not always your friends who get you out of it. And the third one is, when you're in it up to here, for God's sake, don't sing. And that's the truth, too.
Thank you, Tom. And I forgot to say that my name's Sherri, and I'm your MC tonight. Okay. Second storyteller tonight is TJ Morris. And I've heard her a few times now and met in different storytelling venues. And tonight we're friends because we just exchanged contact information, right, TJ?
That's right.
So there you go. You never know how things are gonna develop. So TJ's gonna tell a story. She's a writer as well. I think probably a lot of you know that. And she is going to take us on another one of her stories down memory lane. TJ Morris.
Thank you. Okay, good evening. I've been up here a few times, but I don't know. I'm kind of nervous tonight. I think my story is raggedy and all kinds of stuff, but we're going to see what happens. Here goes. I hope everybody's doing okay this evening. Okay, I love going down memory lane, and today is not going to be any different. So I'm going to start with my maternal grandparents. My grandmother was born in North Carolina, and my grandfather was born in Tennessee. My grandmother was a short woman. She had long hair, salt and pepper hair, and she was a housewife. She also did a little ironing on the side to help bring in a few bucks for the family. Now, when I was a little girl, I loved brushing my grandmother's hair because she had all this long hair. And I would just be brushing and brushing and brushing. I didn't need a baby doll because I had my grandmother, and she had all this hair. Now, my grandmother loved poetry, and she would read poems all the time. And I think this is where I got my love of poetry from. Now, my grandfather died when I was around 1 year old, so I never got to know him. But he was a tall gentleman, dark-skinned medium frame built, and I was told that he worked at a feed mill and he did forklift work. Together, my grandparents worked in the family garden and they raised chickens so they could take care of and feed their family of 7. Now, my grandmother had 3 brothers, Uncle John, Uncle Ira, and Uncle Lewis. One brother, he made kitchen cabinets, did wallpapering, carpentry type work. Another brother, he did install wallpaper, but he also made bleach and sold it to some of the neighborhood stores. And the third brother, he made and repaired umbrellas. Now, my grandmother had some sisters, but they died at an early age. They died from diphtheria. So no one in the family ever had a chance to meet them. Now, grandfather didn't have any siblings. He was an only child. And he left home at the age of 13 to go, and he was a drifter. Let me put it that way. He was a drifter. He drifted around the South. He lived in Tennessee. He lived in Louisiana. He lived in North Carolina. He lived in Mississippi. He lived in Arkansas. Grandfather worked with horses when he left home. So I'm assuming that he took care of them, fed them, helped clean up after them, maybe even train them some. Now, my grandmother, she was the only one out of her siblings to bear children. My grandmother's 3 brothers, none of them had any kids. I think because of the conditions that they grew up in, her sisters died, and her brothers were all sterile. None of them had any offspring. I said, well, my grandmother was the lucky one. Enough about my grandparents. Let me tell you a little bit about my mother and her growing up. Now, my mother grew up in the Midwest, and she lived in a community that had, how can I say, she grew up in the Great Depression and segregation. And in the community where she lived, there were 3 blocks, okay, that the Negroes could live on within the community. And you didn't deviate from these 3 blocks, except for when you went to school. Now, my mother was fortunate enough, or her and her siblings were fortunate enough, that they were allowed to go to school with the white folks. And the school was about 3 miles away. So sometimes they got a chance to take the bus, and sometimes they had to walk. Well, when they had to walk, people would try and sweep them off the street, off the sidewalk with brooms, because they didn't want them walking in front of their places. They would sweep them out into the streets. Now, my mother, when she graduated from high school, there were 5 blacks in her high school graduating class. And this included her sister, who was also in the same grade that she was in. Now, segregation ended when my mother was in high school. And so this meant that she got a chance to drink from the same fountain as a white person. So there was this store that had a soda fountain counter, okay, where you could go and sit at the counter and order a soda, right? And her and her sister couldn't wait to go and get a soda at this counter. So they went, and when they got to the store, the man had taken the fountain out because he didn't want them to drink from it. Well, my experience hasn't been the same as my mother, but I grew up in the Midwest also. I grew up in Chicago, and when I was 3 years old, my parents bought a building on the south side of Chicago. It was a 8-unit, 2-flat, red brick building, and it sat on the corner. Now, I grew up in the 60s with James Brown and Black Power and Chicago's dividing lines. My birth certificate says I'm a Negro. When I was growing up, I was black. And around 40 years of age, I became African American. Now, I when I was little and living in this building, I would be gazing out of the window in the neighborhood, and it was all white folks at the time. And I'd just be looking, I'm a little kid, and my parents had to teach me about race at an early age because I was a light-skinned Negro. I thought I was white. I didn't know anything about that. So they had to teach me about that at an early age. So anyway, here I am looking out of the window, and I just remember being little, and within 3 to 6 months, the whole neighborhood had changed over. I believe that my parents had been used to flip that neighborhood. The government played a big role in racism and segregation, and they would use people to flip neighborhoods. So anyway, I believe they used my parents to flip that neighborhood, which was successful, and they flipped the neighborhood. Now, when the government didn't want to flip a neighborhood, they would make the white owners sign a statement that if they were going to move, that they wouldn't sell to a black person. And that's just the way it was. So anyway, they flipped the neighborhood. My parents had the building, and the building was full of white people. Well, all the white people decided that they didn't want to live in a building that was owned by somebody black, so they moved. Everybody moved out. And, excuse me, everybody moved out. So now that left my parents with this building. And, people moved in, of course, gradually, eventually, into the building. Now, all I remember is that as time went on, we lived on the southwest side of Chicago. I lived around Racine and 79th Street, if you know anything about Chicago, which is over by St. Sabina Catholic School and Church, which is where Father Michael Flager is a priest at that church. And you may have heard of Father Michael Flager. He's always on the news, in the newspaper, because he's always fighting for some kind of justice or equality in that community. He's been in that community a long, long time. He was in that community when I was in that community. And back then, he was known as Brother Mike. Well, as a youth, I can tell you I loved to ride my bike. And I would ride my bike through the neighborhood or around, away from the neighborhood. And I would either ride south or west from where I lived. Now, most of the time I rode with my friends, but sometimes I rode alone because I just love to ride my bike. And I'd just be out riding my bike. Well, at this particular time, Ashland Avenue was a dividing line. But I didn't know Ashland Avenue was a dividing line. So I'm out riding my bike, and I decide I'm going to venture on the other side of Ashland Avenue, right? So I get over there, and I get caught up, get chased by some white boys. If you could have seen me riding that bike, I mean, I was pedaling. I was getting, because I had to get out of there. It was my life, me, and them. So all I wanted to do was get back on the other side of Ashland. But, now I know why I wasn't supposed to go on the other side of Ashland in the first place. And, kids don't always do what you tell them to do. But once I made it crossing the other side of Ashland, they didn't come after me. They stayed on their side of the line, and they let me stay on my side of the line. But, yes, Chicago definitely has dividing lines. And then the dividing line after Ashland became Damon Avenue. And then the dividing line became Western Avenue. And it stayed Western Avenue a long time. I think I was grown, or almost grown, before Western Avenue was no longer the dividing line. Now, we could go down Western Avenue all the way to, 95th Street, because that's where Evergreen Plaza was. That was the shopping mall. And that was our mall. So, you could go down there, you could go to the mall, and all that kind of thing. And eventually, we were able to go over to Ford City Shopping Mall, which was on 79th and Cicero. But you had to get on the bus in the colored neighborhood on 79th Street, and if you took the bus all the way to the end of the line, it ended at Ford City Shopping Mall. So you could get on the bus and go to Ford City Shopping Mall at the end of the line. But you better not get off the bus in between. Because in between, you're going through the white neighborhood. And you couldn't get off in between after like maybe Kedzie at that time. Because if you got off after Pulaski, you was in K-Town. And that wasn't good. But anyway, I said all this to say that I love going down memory lane with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed my story a little bit, somewhat tonight. And I don't know if I want to be caught in certain pockets still today in Chicago. It's still areas I don't want to be in Chicago today. But I don't know how much things have changed. Have they changed a lot? A little bit? You know, was my mother's 3 blocks different from my division lines? I think each one of us each had, you know, something that we had to do. I think my daughter has communities probably more so now. She has more than what I had. You know, she probably has communities. I had dividing lines. My mother had blocks. You know, but I asked myself, has it changed? Has it really changed? So since I can't answer this question, I'm going to let you all think about it and let you all answer it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, TJ. Down memory lane with always some truth and lessons for all of us, just like the first Russian fable, I guess. Always something to be learned. Oh, sorry, I was going down memory lane myself. Come on back. Greg McGuire is our next teller, and he has told stories multiple times, many places. He's from Kenosha. He's a champion bowler, and I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, no, I know what it is. It does matter. He's going to tell us a scary story. Ready?
I'm not nervous. I'm drunk.
Oh, I have to say something.
Yes, say it.
I have to apologize. I said McGuire.
Deguire, it's okay.
Deguire.
I've been called much worse, it's okay. Woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil sends his beast with wrath, for he knows the time is short. Let him who hath understanding recognize the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number 666. That's how that episode started. Some of you know I used to be on AM 1050 WLIP, the Mothership Connection. It was on Sunday nights. It was live radio from 8 p.m. until midnight, big chunk of time. So it was a show. It was paranormal, pop culture, ghosts, goblins, whatever we could to fill the time, we did. So we run across a lot of cool stuff, a lot of weird stuff, a lot of who cares stuff. 3 instances stood out in my mind of weird things that probably shouldn't have happened, but they did, before the episode of which I'll get to. So the 3 weird things, we had all kind of psychics, mediums, numerologists, you name it, wackos, call them what you will, but we had them. So the first one was, all right, she was a psychic medium. So not only could she talk to dead people, she could see dead people. So she came in early on the show. Her segment wasn't going to be on until like after the 9 o'clock hour. So she came into the studio early. She just sat in the background. She says, don't talk to me. Just go on with what you're doing. And when you get to me, I'll tell you my thoughts. Okay, first hour goes by. I'm not going to mention her name. Yes, I remember it. We get her in the microphone. Said, okay, psychic medium, do your worst. What you got? She said, well, first off, she brought a sketch pad. So the whole time she's just drawing stuff. So I said, okay, it's your turn. What have you got for us? She said, well, Greg, this one's for you. Let's have it. I'm not really a believer in this sort of thing, but sometimes you see things that make you change your mind, and this is one of them. So this was before Facebook took off for real. I wasn't on it until late in the game. So what she's going to tell me is something that there's no way possible she could have ever known about, because I never mentioned it on air. This happened years before well, not that many years, but a few years before the radio show, and I never talked about it. So she said, Greg, there's somebody following you around. Terrific. I know what I do in private. I don't need that seen by anybody. So she says, so what, you have a male following you around about your age. The thing with psychics and mediums is we've interviewed enough of them to where we would take call-ins, and so people would ask them questions about their relationships, jobs, what kind of house they're going to get, stupid stuff. But the thing is, people give them too much of an answer, so they can draw into that, and they can give you better answers back. Oh, wow, this guy's a really psychic. No, they're really good listeners. In my opinion, there's a difference. But this one stood out. So I never gave more than I wanted to. I wanted to make them do the work. So she said, okay, it's a young male following you around. It's a good guess, go on. So, well, this male died suddenly. Okay, go on, I'm still listening. See, well, this male died in a car crash. I'm thinking, she can't know this. She said, there's no way she can know this. I said, okay, you have my interest, continue. I said, well, was there a college around here that was going through road construction, and this maybe was a couple of years ago? Thinking, okay, I'm gonna add to your story. Yes, Carthage College went through road construction. What's 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And she said this person died in a car crash right outside this school, Carthage College, and he died suddenly and left people behind, and you guys got to know each other pretty fast, and you became good friends, and just like that, he's gone. I'm like, there's no way she could know this. It's not possible. I said, okay, you've shown me the picture that you have. And she showed me this drawing of my friend Johnny Aiello, who had died in a car crash right in front of Carthage College when they were rerouting Sheridan Road for a little while. The guy who hit him dropped something in the passenger seat and kept driving, and he leaned down to pick up whatever, and when he looked back in the windshield, he went through Johnny's car like a hot knife through butter. Johnny was seatbelted, and it didn't matter. He killed him instantly. Left behind a wife and an unborn child and another daughter. It was really sad, but I never talked about it. And she drew him down to the black hair and dimples that he had. There's no way she could have known that. There he was, picture and all. That's one. That's one thing that should change your mind on things. Second one was a pet psychic. Yes, they exist. So we had one on the show, and everybody called in to talk about their dogs. Well, my dog died. Is he in heaven? An hour of that. Okay, great. So she goes around there's only a few of us in the studio. She says, Greg, you got something for me? I sure do. I gave her a picture of a cat. I said nothing. She said, you're trying to fool me, aren't you? This cat's dead. Okay, I'm listening. She's like, this cat wasn't in town. Did you rescue it from somewhere? I'm seeing a campground. There's no way she could have known this. Go on. So it was a campground, and did you know that the caretaker of the campground was poisoning this cat? Like, there's no way she knew that. That was my first cat, Buffy, which it's true. We rescued her from a campground outside of Janesville, and Buffy had recently died of stomach cancer. They couldn't figure out why. Turns out the psychic said that this guy had been feeding all the stray cats rat poison to try to get rid of them. Well, that would answer a few questions, but there's no way she could have known that. It's not possible. Strike two. Here comes strike three. So we had a hypnotist on the show. Most people wanted to quit smoking or lose weight or who knows what. This guy was really straight and narrow. He recorded all of his conversations, and we thought he was going to be really interesting. Turns out he wasn't. He was really dull. So we were going to have him on for like an hour and a half. And we were going to let him go after the first commercial break because there was nothing there. So after we come back from the commercial break, he said, no, wait a minute. Now, that was one thing Lady come in to quit smoking. It was an hour session, and he had a recording of it. That halfway, just about towards the end of the session, instead of like she was relaxed in a chair, shot up and started speaking another language. Her eyes opened, and she spoke German for about 10 minutes. And then she shut up, went back to her relaxed position, and he said he woke her up. I said, well, you didn't find that to be strange at all? I said, well, I asked her when she come out of it, I said, well, the session went well, but did you, he said he asked her if you knew how to speak other languages. Like, no. So you sure? No. You have any German relatives? Did you take German in high school? Nope. Doctor said, what can you do? We'll move on. I'll go, wait a minute. Well, wait a minute. Isn't that a little weird? I mean, does that happen all the time? The doctor's like, well, no, it doesn't. So, well, okay, did you have the recording translated? So, well, now that you think of it, no, I never did. I didn't care. Please, if you have that recording, even if it's off air, hey, have it translated. I'm dying to know what this woman said from out of nowhere, and she's a middle-aged woman. So a couple days later, he had my home phone number. He called me and he told me what was translated. And what was translated, now this is what he said. I didn't hear for the record, I didn't hear it. He didn't want to give me her voice or her name or anything, which is the way it should be. But he said that it was translated with a friend of his who used to teach German in high school, and I forget what state he was in. But the translation was something like apologizing for something. Like they didn't know what they were doing until it was too late and he was sorry for whatever it was. Please forgive him. Well, okay, that's a little weird, isn't it? That's strike 3. So things that should be improbable are now probable, right? These things that you see on TV and movies like this, these things really happen. So then the big one. So if anyone here listens to WLIP, there's a lady who calls up every show. Her name is Shirley. I don't know Shirley's last name. Shirley's everyone's grandma. Like she loves every show. If there's a show on eating meat, Shirley's going to say, oh my God, I love eating meat. The next hour is a vegetarian show. Oh my God, I love being a vegetarian. Shirley loves every show. So Lenny Palmer has his morning show, Lighten Up. He's the WLIP morning guy. But every couple of months during the seasons, he has these Lighten Up with Lenny's where his audience can meet and drink with him. I think it's great what he does. So I went to one of them to support him, and Shirley was there, and she recognized my voice from being on the Mothership Connection. So we got to talking. She's like, I've got this really old Ouija board at home that I've never ever used before. Do you think maybe we can bring it on the show sometime? Who cares? It's made by Parker Brothers. Is it possible Parker Brothers made a portal to hell? Tell you what, Shirley, let me run this by and I'll bet we can make this happen. So we did this. A couple of months later, it was on Halloween. My backpack, by the way, the Ouija board. The Ouija board backpack. I thought it was cool. So turns out that no one had really done it on radio that I'm aware of. George Norrie, who does Coast to Coast AM and was formerly the Art Bell Show, who did everything bizarre and weird on AM radio, turns out was too chicken shit to do a Ouija board live on the air. Wussed out. We didn't want to do it. So I did some checking on the internet. Now I know that everything not on the internet is true. I get that. But turns out no one had ever done it before. So I'm like, well, now we got it. So we brought Shirley in. But before Shirley came in, I came into the studio early that day because we videotaped and recorded the whole thing. We had 2 psychics, 2 paranormal investigators, and 1 ghost hunter in the background watching and videotaping the entire thing. But me thinking, well, this is going to be the dullest episode of all time. Nothing's going to happen. I'm going to bring something to irritate it, whatever it is, because I want to elicit a response. This is live radio. I don't want snoring or nothing. I want something. So one of the paranormal investigators that came in, I'm not going to mention anybody's names, I told him and showed him what I brought in. It's inside the bag. So I said, if this gets dull, I'm bringing these out. I'm bringing the big guns out, and I'm going to make some rain in here. I'm going to make it snow, whatever. I want the walls bleeding. I don't care what happens. Shirley comes in and brings cookies for everybody because she's everybody's grandma, so she brought chocolate chip cookies. This is the same shirt I wore, my Slayer shirt, for a Ouija board episode. It's got to happen. Turns out everyone was too chicken to work said Ouija board. So in order for Ouija boards to work, there's a little thing called the planchette. It's a little triangle thing. So typically you have to sit across from each other, and everyone's got to put both hands on this planchette, and then you ask questions, and then the thing moves around to answer things, right? So we're like, let's let the audience, we'll have some call-in questions. And Shirley and I we were the only two stupid enough to do this thing. It's her board, and I figured, what the hell? So the call-in questions were we going to have a snowy winter? Am I going to get back with my girlfriend? I thought at least someone would call in with a cool question, like if Adam and Eve were the first two human beings, did they have belly buttons? That's a great question. We didn't even get that. So it's stupid questions. Snow, girlfriends, who cares? You know what? After the commercial break, I'm bringing out the guns. I'm going to let them have it. But during the commercial break, something weird happened, and this is caught on video. I know who's got the video. We weren't touching the planchette. Son of a bitch moved by itself. We all stood there watching it. It spelled out my name. Dun, dun, dun. I figured, why? It must know what I brought. It had to have known already. When I at that moment in time, I'm like, okay, this just got real. This went from Parker Brothers BS to an absolutely portal to hell that we opened in the radio studio for some stupid reason, thinking it'd be cool. So I never brought out the big guns. I'm like, I'm just going to keep them covered. I'm going to keep them in a bag. I'm just going to let that go. So the psychic was afraid for me. So when that segment is over, before they left, she gave me some kind of hex spell. I don't know, to make sure that whatever we drew out didn't follow me home. Like, it can do that? Son of a bitch is going to follow me home now? That's messed up. Okay, so that show ended. Turns out it was one of our highest rated shows. Yes, WLIP does measure these sorts of things. And we blew everything out of the water that they had for the previous year as far as people listening. It was unreal. I wish I could get a copy of that show, but I can't. So before I go on to part 2 of the stupid thing we did, I want to show you what I brought. And you religious people in here, you might want to cover your eyes. So me being a book nerd, I brought books. My copy of the Holy Bible, because I wanted something stuff to happen. Copy of the Necronomicon, all together here. Anton Sandor's LaVey Satanic Bible, all right here. Necronomicon spell book, and the Satanic Bible spell book. All horrible reads, by the way, they're dull. Nothing happened. So I thought. So that was October. So this was a couple of weeks later, it started happening at the house. It happened. So I have an attached garage, and I'm watching TV. So behind me is the door that leads into the garage, and I started hearing. That's odd. Well, it is windy outside. There's no insulation in the garage. The wind creaks. I mean, I'm trying to rationalize every possible thing. I never even thought of what had happened. It didn't cross my mind. I'm thinking rational, stupid stuff. The wind, I'm an idiot, whatever. Now, at the time, my 2 cats, I had a brother and sister cat. Their names were Willow and Smeagol. Willow and Smeagol were very into this noise. They were at the garage door looking at the door. It's never good when animals are involved because they can, I don't know what they see, but it's not what we see. So this went on. A couple of nights in a row, always the same time, always the same night. Terrific. Tell the wife, calls me a moron. You're stupid. You don't hear anything, you're an idiot. Thank you. So clearly whatever was out wanted in. Glad it was out. So the noise moved as it got on in wintertime. So now we're moving into November, December, the same. It sounded like someone was throwing a tennis ball inside the garage, hitting the wood and then hitting the door. You gotta be shitting me. The noise moved. So I have a back deck, and my back bedroom the deck is attached. So when you open up one of my windows to the bedroom, you can see the deck. It's mighty cold in February. It's a wooden deck water gets into the wood, and when it freezes, it expands. Like we've all heard the cracking of wood noise. So I started hearing that noise outside the bedroom window. This is crack, crack. Well, there's no more thumps, ice, whatever. I don't know what the hell that is. Then the animals get involved. They're pawing. Both cats are pawing simultaneously at the window. And that's when the wife said, "Hey, what's going on out there? Is there another animal out there?" I hope not. I don't know what the hell's making that noise. I couldn't tell you. So this went on. So it was one of the Sundays on the show, Shirley called in, wanted to know if anything followed me home. I go, "Geez, Shirley, now that you mention it, here's what's been happening." I said, "Shirley, after the episode, you said, where did you have the Ouija board before you brought it into the studio?" She's like, "Well, it was an upstairs bedroom that we never used. It was in a closet." I said, okay. Where's the Ouija board now? Did you put it away? Where did you put it? It's like, "Well, I think this is on my table. I never put it back where I found it." Now we're on to something. Shirley, do me a favor. Put the Ouija board back where you found it. And then we'll find out if these things end, or if something gets worse, or Parker Brothers really made a portal to hell. We're going to find out one way or the other. We're going to end this mystery. She said, "Okay, fine." 2 weeks went by and nothing ever happened again. None of this. No cracks, no creaks, no nothing. Cats didn't look at the door anymore. Cats didn't look at the window anymore. So Shirley called. This must have been 2 weeks after that. I said, "Shirley, did you put the Ouija board away?" She said, "Yeah, I sure did." Everything ended just that fast. If someone else tells this story, you're full of beans. I wouldn't have believed it either, but it happened. It's a thing that happened. I have no explanation for it. I mean, I carried all these stupid books. They should burn up. According to the movies, this bag should be on fire right now. I mean, they're just books. But clearly, it thought maybe I was fun to be around because I had these with me, or who knows what. I'm not sure I want to know the answer. All I know is it ended. I also told Shirley that if I'd opened up my mailbox or went into one of my closets and found something of hers in my house, I'm moving to Canada. I don't know, keep it, I'm out. Thankfully, none of that happened. But that was it. So that's things that you don't think can happen, even if you don't believe in these things, which is great. I really didn't either, because I'm not scared that easily, except for ghost movies. Like, I can watch slasher movies and laugh all day long. They're hilarious. But scary movies like ghost movies, I can't do. And now after this, I really can't do. The Exorcist. I've met actors. I've been to enough conventions. I've met people who were in The Exorcist. Like, get into a movie. Can't watch it. I'm out. I don't know what that was. So maybe this is all connected somehow. I don't know. So I guess the moral of my story is I would stay the hell away from Ouija boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg Deguire. I feel compelled to comment. I mean, I have a microphone, so why not? That took me down memory lane, Greg, because when I was growing up in the 60s and we went to slumber parties, I was strongly warned against Ouija boards. I don't know if they were some kind of little trend right then or not, but...
They were very popular back in the 60s.
Okay, so my mother, God rest her soul in peace, might very well be spinning around in her grave like a whirling dervish, just knowing that I'm standing so close to talk about a Ouija board. Because I was raised in a really conservative religious household, and we were really warned about those. If there's ever any Ouija boards at your slumber parties, you call us. That'd be worse than drinking, I guess. Call us, and we'll come and pick you up. So that was a really great story. Thank you, Greg. It's intermission time, so let's get a drink. Let's leave tips. Let's schmooze around for a few minutes, right, Darlene? 10 minutes or so? Thank you.